Hey guys, I am so excited to be sharing another video with y'all. We are coming up to the end of our school year. We are going to take a week off and then kind of finish out the last, I think it's 4 weeks. And as we finish it up, I, of course, am kind of reflecting on the year and thinking about what we did. And I thought it would be fun to kind of just reflect and share with you guys the different subjects that we covered and how they went. Because I'm going to be quite honest, when you're planning out a year, and even now as I plan out next year, I have to remind myself how excited we get and how, we think, oh, we're going to do this, and this, and then a lot of it just dies off. So that's what I want to share with you today. I kind of want to talk about how I intended to do things, and then eventually how reality kicked in and what we actually were consistent with. Today specifically is going to be about family studies, and I hope to do this kind of with my other grade levels with each of my kids. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Jamie, and this is Simply Learning Together, where I love sharing about our homeschool and just our different experiences. And I hope that in sharing that experience, it might be helpful to you. We kind of had an odd year. It was very different. Instead of my 4 children, I had a 5th here a few times a week. And so that kind of brought its challenges, but also many blessings. And so I started the year with a lot of goals. And then when I had a toddler around, I realized simplifying was necessary. And so a lot of things fell off. And I don't say that as a negative thing. I just said that because sometimes there's seasons where simple is better. I was really grateful for that because it really made me be present with the kids. And even though we weren't adding all these subjects on top of each other, we were definitely just enjoying each other's time together. And so I'm thankful for that. So I thought I would start by sharing the subjects that I wanted to do, and eventually they died. And we weren't very consistent. And then I thought towards the end, I would share some of the ones that survived everything, all the challenges of the year. So let's jump in and get started. The first thing I want to share is what I wanted to do with my younger ones. I have a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, and I have a 9-year-old and 11-year-old. With my younger ones, I don't really like doing super formal curriculum, especially my preschoolers. And with my first grader, or she's technically a kindergartner, this was her kindergarten year. My main goal for her was just to dive into just good readings. I really didn't want to do a formal language arts curriculum with her. And so the idea I had for my little ones was to be intentional about sharing fairy tales. And I got this recommendation from Read Aloud Revival. This is Classic Fairy Tales by Scott Gustafson. And we spent some time in here reading through these stories, using the verbiage for copy work for some of my older ones. So these are really beautiful. And honestly, the reason I'm putting it in this video is because it ended up being a family study. All of my kids, up to my 11-year-old, loved these stories. This is such a good book to have if you're just looking for something, it's good literature to read. They get so engaged in these fairy tales. It's crazy. I mean, I could just sit, I promise you, if I just sat and opened this book up and started looking at the pictures, within 20 seconds, I would have 4 children right around me. So I highly recommend this book, especially if you're just looking for a simple strategy to read good literature to your little ones and even your big ones. Then we started the year with a picture study. I have done these picture studies before. This is from Simply Charlotte Mason. I love these picture studies and my kids love them too. We aim to do 1 picture a week. So I specifically picked Homer because of the time period we were studying in history. I thought it would be more meaningful. These little packages come with these photos, and then inside there's a booklet that tells you what to do, and there's also information about the paintings, as well as kind of information about the artist. And oh, that's in the same book. Okay, so what we would do is each time we sat down, we would read a little bit about the artist and then mark where we left off and then look at a painting. And there we did that about once a week until we ran out of paintings. So I love these things. They're so easy to incorporate. In my dream world, I would be doing them consistently one after the other, but once it kind of got finished, we never picked up another. But I have done, I think, 3 different artists, and I really like these. The next thing we tried is this book, Atlas Adventures. I have a video on this book. I show you a little bit more about what's inside of it, but basically we tried to do some world geography, and I kept it really simple. I just went from one page to the next. We looked at the pictures, we read through some of the facts, and anything that seemed interesting to us, I literally just pulled up a video on YouTube and we watched it. So it was so simple. And the kids really enjoyed it. And then eventually it became one of the things that died off. So if you are looking for a simple way to add in some world geography, I do love this book. My kids loved it. There's tons of information on here. I will link the video where I talk a little bit more about it. I wish I would have been more consistent with it. I try not to beat myself up about not following through with these things. I think I just have to focus on the fact that we did put time towards it. It might have just been, like a 6 or 8 week unit for us, but some is better than none. And that's going to be my focus for this first part of this video. All right, so let's move on to something else. Let's talk about poetry. Poetry is something every single year I'm like, I want to do more poetry, because I read and hear all this stuff about how good it is for kids to be exposed to that language. And I also find my children, the more poetry we're reading, the more poetically they speak. And I know that sounds crazy, but if we are reading poetry, my kids want to write their own poetry. And they also are, when they describe things, it's very poetic. And so it's motivating me. I really want to read more poetry, but it is one of those things I can't be consistent with. One year I was consistent with poetry and I read Sing a Song of Seasons. There was one for every day. Maybe I need to just pull that out again and do it. I will link it here. It is a fantastic poetry book and it's so easy. These short little poems every single day. We decided to do a poet. Emily Dickinson is who I picked. I found a book from the library about her and read it to the kids. And then each week we kind of read a poem. This book in particular, Poetry for Young People, I got it off of Thrift Books. And at the beginning, there is some information about her as well. My kids loved it. They loved listening to the poetry. They would beg for more. Unfortunately, it was one of those things that was easy to drop. So every so often we'd pull it out again and, let's read a poem about Emily Dickinson, or that Emily Dickinson wrote, but it just didn't get consistent. I think maybe that is going to be my goal next year, is just consistency. We're coming on a different season, and we are actually joining a co-op, which is kind of a first for us. Well, we did classical conversations a few years ago, but I think that is going to kind of help a little bit with that. So yeah, that as I sit here and reflect, I think that's a good goal, consistency. Okay, so once again, some is better than none. Okay, let's talk about stuff that lasted a little bit longer than the first 2 months of the year. Let's go with science. Science is always a tricky subject for me to teach, which is odd because I taught it in a school. I taught 5th grade science for 7 years. And so you would think I would be great, but it's just one that I struggle with. We've done lots of different types of sciences. We've done unit studies. We've done textbooks. About a year ago, I bought this Berean Builder's Science in the Beginning. It probably has been my favorite textbook that we've done. And the thing I love about it is every single lesson comes with this little activity. So you can either do it or not, but I just love that there's an option every day. And so I can think to myself, okay, yes, I want to do it. Or the next day, no, I don't. It's not like one experiment for the whole chapter that you feel kind of obligated to do. Does that make sense? So because there's so many, I don't feel bad when I say, not today, maybe next time. But yeah, so I really did love it for that reason. I will be honest and say that I did not enjoy reading the text. But I think it probably my oldest daughter, who was 10 at the time, she probably got it. The rest of them, it probably was just way over their head. And it says it's for all ages, and I can see that. But the text is just kind of a little wordy. And I found myself wishing I just had like a picture book covering the same information. So actually on my blog, I had some picture book lists for different units in this book, and we enjoyed that. So, I would pick a topic. So say, whatever is in here, this is talking about hot air. Okay. I would go and I would find a picture book related to whatever he was going to talk about. I would read that instead. And then I would or wouldn't do the activity. It just depended on it. And so when we did that, it was enjoyable, but it gets exhausting looking for picture books for every single lesson. This, yes, good, but those are my pros and cons about it. There was one part of the year where I kind of got worn out by all of that searching, and we tried a different approach to science because I was feeling guilty thinking my oldest daughter needed more science. And so I ended up putting that aside for a little bit, and I got one of these from a bookstore. And I was having my oldest daughter do these activities in here. And then I was, once again, finding picture books that I could read to my little ones. So she was kind of doing the main work, my oldest was, and then I was bringing in the rest of the family by taking those same topics, sharing it with the little ones. I think the one that we did was on DNA and genes. And so that was really interesting. We definitely learned some stuff that we hadn't touched on before. But once again, that was just something that didn't really last. Most of the time, I always ended up just saying, we could fit some science in. And so I'd pull this out and either read one or find a book or find a video related to it. I wish I could just find a textbook that I liked reading. I'm struggling with that. Next year, we're going to do the science that the co-op does. So I really don't have a choice. But yeah, that is a text. I struggle with textbooks. I'm going to be honest with you. Which brings me to my next thing, which is history, which I love. Our history for the last 2 years has been American history through picture books. And so it is completely everything that I could ever dream of. This is something that I created for my children, and we had the best time doing this together. Starting from Viking exploration, we worked all the way through American history, modern times, with just picture books. I'm not even kidding you. One after the next, we read a book, talked about it, had discussions, put it aside, went to the next one, right down the timeline. And I saved this book list to share with all of you. And I have loved chatting with y'all about it. I love how much you guys love these picture books. But yeah, so that made it so easy. And so what happened was we just took out, like, here's a picture of one of the lists. And there's a picture book where it goes with on the timeline, and the different little activities or videos to go with it. And yeah, we just went one after the next, check, check, check. And it was great. So much better than a textbook. So history, we stuck with this for 2 years. That's pretty good. But we finished it early. So we probably finished it last month, March. And so then now our history has just been kind of enriching history that we read about other things. We will start a new history next year. But this was absolutely phenomenal. I highly recommend. People ask me, what are the best ages for something like this? And I'm going to tell you, I am in my 30s, and I learned more American history reading these picture books than I ever did reading a textbook in all of my schooling. So something that I truly, truly loved. The one other thing I want to talk about is our Bible studies that we do together as a family. And these actually were pretty consistent all the way through. This might sound formal, but we actually do this before bedtime. So it's kind of a bedtime routine, which makes it even easier to be consistent with. We are working as a family through this devotional. This is long story short. We've been reading it the whole year. We took a break for Advent. But as you can see, we have only made it like a quarter of the way through. I love this because our whole family gets to talk about the Bible stories starting in the very beginning all the way through. It comes with prayers and questions to think about, the Bible readings to read. And so we are just slowly working through this. So we try to read this on all of our weeknights. Sometimes, it ends up being 3 times a week. But this is something that we really love. And then with my kids, with my girls, when I put them to bed, We always do the same thing. We read aloud. So we read tons of novels this year. Then we do one more little Bible activity. And I've shared about this before about, I think I have a video, homeschooling at bedtime or something like that. But yeah, a lot of our Bible study comes right before bed. And I find it to be relaxing. And also the whole reason I started it is because a couple of my kids were having bad dreams, and it kind of just like put everybody's mind at peace. And so yeah, that is something that has been consistent all the time. So what we do is we first memorize a monthly scripture, and I basically pick something that my kids is meaningful to us. So recently we talked about filling our heads with good and not evil, and so I picked the Bible verse that talks about that. Think about pure, lovely things. And you think I would have it memorized, but not on the spot. I have this little scripture box that we use at times to help us review some of the scriptures that we learned in the past, but we just basically recite a scripture for a whole month, the same one, and it's been really great. Then we pick a hymn from this book. We sing that song together. So I just go through, I grew up on these hymns in my church, and I just pick the next one that I know. I read the little description about the hymn, and then I sing it for the kids, and then every day we just sing it. We actually only really do the first verse, but they have it memorized, and it's so cute when they're around the house and they're singing their hymns because they're stuck in their head. I love that. But yeah, that's how we get hymn study. I remember when hymn study stressed me out. How are these people fitting in hymn study? I literally just sing it before bed. One verse, that's it. And then my kids know it eventually. And then the last thing that we added this year, probably mid-year, was because my kids were starting to ask a lot of questions. My oldest in particular just turned 11. And, you know, as we would read the Bible studies or things that she would hear from Sunday school or church, she would ask questions. And I was embarrassed because there were some that I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. And so I had seen these books before and always wanted to get them and never did. And then this was the perfect reason. But this is called Answers for Kids, the Answers book for kids. And it's basically just books filled with questions and answers. And so I'll show you, I'll open it up. There's a question from a kid and then scripture, and the guy answers it based on the scripture. These have been so interesting and wonderful, and it is my kids' favorite thing. So we read our book, our novel, we say our scripture once, we sing a hymn once, and then I read one question. They always ask for more, but I read one question and answer right before they go to bed for them to think about and ponder as they go to sleep. But they love it. They love it. We did one on dinosaurs in the flood. We did one on creation in the fall. And then we still have some more. So they absolutely love this part. Okay, so yeah, that's it. You can see I started with kind of the things that fell off first, and then I ended with the things that have stuck around the longest. This bedtime routine, I'm telling you, if you haven't watched that bedtime video, there is so much that can be done right before bed. It's hard. You know, if you have a busy schedule, I can see that it would be harder to do. But if you have a consistent bedtime routine, or if you like routine, it's one of the best things that we've done because it just gets everybody settled. And all these things that I was trying to fit during my school day, you know, it takes 20 minutes and we can do it all together before bed. And even Dad is involved in it. So that's kind of a fun thing for us. So yeah, and then a little bit about science. You know, it's not my best subject. History was great. History was really great, and I'm kind of sad to close that chapter. I'll have to share more about next year soon, especially since we're joining a co-op, so that kind of changes up some of our curriculum choices. But I hope this video was helpful. This was just our family subjects, and I really hope to kind of share a look into each of my kids and what we did for them and what worked and what didn't and the different changes that were made. Maybe you won't make the same mistakes as I did, or you'll learn from my own thinking, which is consistency. I think that's my goal for next year. Be consistent. Pick things, simplify things that you know you can be consistent with. I'll end on that.